الاستفراغ، الزعويط، الشم مو طبيعي، يعني لا تقدر تتنفسي. نظري أنا صارت يعني
لتاني يوم وهن ما عرفانين شو بدهم يعطوهم دواء. هو الدواء الوحيد اللي عم يعطوهم اياه. طبعا كهرباء ما في عنا، مشغلين المولدات ومشغلين غطاسات مي وعم يكتوا عليهم مي.
حاولوا يجيبوا لنا خل، كل ما نشم ريحة الخل كل ما نزيد نفسنا، تزيد شيء مو طبيعي. بس تفاجأت بالأخ الثاني اللي استشهد، صار منظره أكثر من الواقع، يعني تنفخ بشكل يعني، والعفو الدم عم ينزل من أنفه والزبد طالع من تمه. أنا ما أقدر أشوفه نهائي، ما أقدر أشوفه، ما عم يروح من بالنا ولا عم نقدر ننساه نهائي.
It took nearly 3 days for the world to realize the scale of the chemical massacre.
We've obtained some disturbing video.
A video that we have obtained, which, as you said, is absolutely gruesome.
Opposition activists say men, women and children were gassed by government forces near Damascus on Wednesday.
L'opposition syrienne parle d'au moins 1300 morts et accuse le régime d'avoir utilisé des gaz toxiques.
For Paris and Washington, Bashar al-Assad had gone too far. The Western capitals began to take a hard line.
My fellow Americans, I determined that it is in the national security interests of the United States to respond to the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons through a targeted military strike.
Je le dis ici avec la force nécessaire. La France est prête à punir ceux qui ont pris la décision infâme de gazer des innocents.
One of the president's former diplomatic advisors meets us at Quai d'Orsay. Roman Nadal explains to us the hidden meaning behind what the president said that day.
Ceux qui ont pris la décision infâme de gazer des innocents.
Ce qui est en jeu là, c'est une intervention militaire directe.
Une intervention militaire sous la forme de frappe pour anéantir ou affaiblir les capacités du régime syrien à utiliser les armes chimiques contre sa population. Oui, c'est ce qu'indique le président de la République devant la communauté internationale, c'est la position qu'il prend au nom de la France après le massacre de la Ghouta.
C'était une déclaration tout à fait forte qui satisfait ceux qui attendent une fermeté quelconque des pays occidentaux. Mais en réalité, elle n'a été suivie que par le vide.
La décision infâme
But Assad was saved.
de gazer des innocents.
Faced with imminent bombings, Vladimir Putin, the Syrian regime's unfailing ally, suggested that Syria's chemical weapons be destroyed. And Bashar al-Assad accepted. UN inspectors were sent to Syria to dismantle the entire chemical arsenal there. To date, 92% of Syria's chemical weapons have been transported out of the country and loaded onto this cargo ship to be destroyed. Airstrikes are no longer on the agenda. Despite everything, France considers the operation to be a success.
Est-ce que vous comprenez qu'il y a une grande différence entre nous allons punir les responsables et nous allons aider le régime syrien à démanteler son programme chimique? C'est pas le même ordre de valeur.
Il y a des objectifs que nous nous fixons et ensuite il y a le résultat que nous pouvons obtenir en fonction des équilibres diplomatiques et de l'état de la communauté internationale pour avancer et pour décider. Ce que souhaitait la France, c'est qu'il n'y ait plus d'armes chimiques en Syrie et que le régime de Bachar el-Assad ne puisse plus les utiliser. Le résultat est là et c'est ça qui compte aujourd'hui.
France believed that Assad's chemical arsenal was under control. But on the 11th of April, a barrel full of chlorine was thrown out of a helicopter over the town of Kafrazita in the west of the country. The yellow smoke, which is particular to chlorine, appeared in the sky. This is what remains of the barrel thrown from the helicopter. A dirty bomb that fell from the sky. Chlorine is much less powerful than sarin, and so there were 2 deaths that day. But the attack was also 2 fingers up to the West. No one was able to prevent Bashar al-Assad from using chemical weapons again. Talking to the TV channel Europe 1, François Hollande was horrified by this latest use of chemical weapons by the Syrian regime.
Est-ce qu'il est vrai que Bachar el-Assad a utilisé des armes chimiques? Je n'ai pas eu de doute sur l'utilisation des armes chimiques par le régime de Bachar el-Assad. C'est la raison pour laquelle, vous vous en souvenez, en septembre... Mais encore maintenant? Là, nous avons encore quelques éléments, mais je n'ai pas les preuves. Ce que je sais, c'est que ce régime a démontré à la fois l'horreur des moyens qu'il pouvait utiliser et le refus de toute transition politique.
His words were unequivocal. However, we will show that none of this would have been possible without the complicity of Western countries, including France. To understand this, we need to go back to the 1970s, when Hafez al-Assad, the father of the current Syrian president, decided to acquire a weapon to deter and respond to his enemy state, Israel, who themselves had a nuclear program at their disposal. His solution was chemical weapons, also known as the poor man's nuclear weapon, the manufacture of which is apparently child's play. The base products that make up chemical weapons are often substances that are freely on sale for public use.
Alors ça, c'est un produit qui s'appelle le fluorure de sodium, qui est un produit courant que l'on peut trouver dans des substances comme les dentifrices, par exemple, ou autres. Ça un dentifrice ici. Ce fluorure de sodium, mélangé avec des dérivés du phosphore, va servir par la suite à préparer le sarin, tout simplement. On a écrit le sarin.
Sarin would be the principal chemical weapon that the Syrian regime would arm itself with.
Théoriquement, faire une arme chimique comme le sarin, c'est assez simple.
C'est très simple. Je dirais qu'à Bac plus 2, un chimiste peut le faire.
C'est terrifiant, ça aussi.
C'est terrifiant, oui, je sais bien. Je dis bien, c'est terrifiant. Avec peu de moyens, on peut arriver à faire une arme de destruction massive, par conséquent qui rejoint le nucléaire, peut-être pas autant d'ailleurs, parce que c'est quand même une surface limitée qui sera atteinte, mais il n'empêche, l'arme chimique est une arme qui est facile à faire.
So the dictator's only challenge was to obtain these innocuous substances for industrial use in large enough quantities so as to be able to manufacture banned weapons. And that is where the West comes in. From the outset, France has found themselves implicated in the Syrian chemicals program, as is confirmed by this report from 1990, which even talks of a French connection. According to this document written by an American researcher, the biggest names in the French pharmaceuticals industry flocked to Damascus in the 1980s. The report also underlines the crucial role played by France in helping Syria to develop both a chemical and a biological weapons capability. Towards the end of the first decade of the new millennium, Syria possessed the largest clandestine chemical arsenal in the world. The country also had a strong relationship with France.
Tapis rouge, pour la France, le maître de Damas n'est plus un paria.
Under Nicolas Sarkozy, France was the only country to reach out to the Syrian dictator. He was even a guest of honor at the 2008 Bastille Day celebrations. More recently, in September 2013, an English newspaper revealed that the UK had delivered tons of sensitive chemical products to Syria. This article and the revelations contained within it raised questions in the mind of a German member of parliament. We're in Hamburg to meet the former director of an NGO specialized in chemical weapons, who is today a left-wing elected representative in the German parliament. Jan van Eycken remembers the day that he discovered the English newspaper's article on the internet.
I think that's it. I think I saw this independent article on Twitter that the UK government exported chemicals related to Sarin on the 2nd of September.
After compiling public statistics, the German MP is convinced that his country also delivered sensitive chemical products to Syria. He asked the German government for confirmation. Their response came within a few days.
It's the first question we posed to the government early September, where we asked for the first time about whether any kind of sensible chemicals were licensed for Syria, and the answer was yes. That was a shock for me.
In their response, there is a long list of chemical products supplied to Syria. Many of these products contain fluorine, which, as you remember, is one of the ingredients used to make toothpaste that can also be used to make sarin. Germany exported more than 100 tons of it to Syria between 2002 and 2006.
However, can you sell chemicals that can be used for sarin production into a country where you know they are producing sarin? I didn't think it was possible.
And what was the answer?
This is the ridiculous part. Here it says here, in all cases, the civilian use was presented as plausible by the government. It's similar to, going to North Korea, selling uranium there because the North Korean government tells us, oh, it's just for peaceful purposes.
Do you think it's possible that French companies made the same kind of business with Bashar al-Assad?
I'm pretty sure that this was not only German companies, but that many other European countries and probably very likely also French companies were involved. I have no information on that, I have no names, but France has a very well-developed chemical industry. They had very tight relationships with Syria over the last 30 years. They even sold them rockets and everything 30 years ago, so why not chemicals?
Like Germany and England, has France also recently exported sensitive chemical products to Syria? There are two especially questionable substances: triethylamine and monoisopropylamine. These two products are generally used to make weed killer, but Syria has used them to manufacture sarin gas. The international code for these two products is 292119. Has France sold products from category 292119 to Syria? To find out, we need to consult this UN website, which indexes all trade that is carried out worldwide. We discover that between 2006 and 2010, tons of chemical products under the code 292119 were indeed sold to Syria by France. 69.1 tons in 2006, 15.6 tons in 2007, and then 10.7 tons in 2010, just 1 year before the revolution. In total, 95.4 tons have been sent to Syria. The problem is that the code 292119 covers around 200 different substances. To find out if the French deliveries contain triethylamine and monoisopropylamine, we have to ask the authority that has the details on exports: Customs. After several months of waiting, we finally receive a response by mail. What is clear from this is that the industrial usage of the two substances is so widespread that it is not monitored. France is unable to say if they have sold any to Bashar al-Assad. Chemical weapons have a long history in Europe, starting with the First World War in 1917, when Germany bombed the Belgian city of Ypres with mustard gas. The gas burns the eyes and the lungs and inflicts wounds that are almost impossible to treat. Chemical weapons did not cause a lot of deaths during the Great War, but the international community still decided to ban them. A convention signed in Geneva in 1925 banned any use of chemical weapons during conflict. But in the course of the Second World War, Germany found a new use for them. to implement the final solution by exterminating the Jews. Hitler redirected an insecticide product with a cyanide base and transformed it into a deadly gas. Zyklon B, a name that has left its mark on history. Zyklon B was released into gas chambers through ventilation pipes connected to shower heads. Zyklon B would go on to kill millions of people in the death camps. It was largely manufactured in Germany, but what is less well known is that it was also produced in France. Throughout the war, this French village, Villers-Saint-Sepulcre, located in the department of Oise, mass-produced Zyklon B for Nazi Germany. It happened in this agricultural pesticides factory that today stands empty. Corinne Lanois is a member of the village's Historical Research Society.
Dans le village, personne n'a envie d'en parler. Au contraire, tout le monde se ferme. On préfère oublier plutôt que de parler de cette période. On n'a pas envie d'être lié à cette image de collaboration.
In 1940, the French factory reached an agreement with the German occupiers, who would order increasing quantities of Zyklon B, and the profits would be split 50-50. In the basement of the Holocaust Memorial in Paris, some rare photos have been preserved. They were taken by one of the factory's workers in 1942. In them, you can see workers holding boxes of Zyklon B that are labelled in French. Behind other workers, there is even more Zyklon B. Annie Lecroix-Ries has spent more than 25 years studying the collaboration between French companies and the German occupiers, and it is to her that we owe this discovery.
Le jour, ça doit être en 1996, je crois, où j'ai découvert ce dossier-là, j'ai vraiment eu l'impression d'avoir découvert un diamant. Hein.
The diamond is these records abandoned by the Nazi occupiers after the liberation. They provide proof of massive increases in the production of Zyklon B from 1940 onwards. Initially, the Villers-Saint-Sepulcre factory was producing 1 ton of Zyklon B per year. 4 years later, the amount had skyrocketed.
Nous voici en mai, quantité en tonnes, et nous avons toujours notre usine Villers-Saint-Sepulcre, 37 tonnes. Pour 1 mois.
70 years later, historians begin to suspect that this gas, manufactured in France, was used in the gas chambers.
Moi, je veux bien qu'il ait servi à tout, sauf à l'extermination des Juifs, mais comme il a augmenté d'une manière, pour le coup, tout à fait stratosphérique à l'époque où on assassinait les Juifs en masse à Auschwitz. Eh bien, ma foi, la France qui a tout vendu à l'Allemagne a aussi vendu du gaz qui a servi à tuer des Juifs.
Despite the 1925 weapons treaty, the major powers manufactured thousands of tons of chemical weapons after the war. For example, here on an American military base, we can see thousands of drums filled with sarin. And France was not to be outdone. Up until 1978, it was secretly testing chemical weapons in the Algerian desert. It was in this context that at the end of the 1980s, another drama unfolded. This time, It happened in Iraq, in a small town to the east of the country, right next to the border with Iran, Halabja. By 1988, the town's Kurdish inhabitants had been living with constant war for 8 years. Since September 1980, Saddam Hussein's Iraq had been leading a relentless war against Iran and their leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. The inhabitants of Halabja, who had been persecuted for years by Saddam Hussein, chose to support Iran in the conflict. They were seen as traitors, and in March 1988, they were forced to pay for it. Iraq's leaders decided to punish the whole town by gassing them with chemical weapons. A plan conceived by Ali Hassan al-Majid, Saddam Hussein's cousin, who governed the north of the country. A few weeks before the attack, he announced his project during a meeting between officials. On the 16th of March 1988 at 3 p.m, the Mirage planes of the Iraqi army bombarded the town. Some shells contained sarin, others mustard gas. Within a few hours, 5,000 people had been killed by gas. Not even in the trenches of the First World War had chemical weapons killed so many in such a short time. "26 years later, the devastated town still shows the scars of the attack in every street. Hekmat Abdullah was a teenager at the time of the attack. He grew up in this neighborhood where almost nothing has changed since that fateful day.
شهيدەکان هەمویان لەم جادەوە ئاوا ئاهاتن تا ئەچوونە نەکان هەمویان کەوتبوون ڕسمەکانیان فلیمەکانیان تا ئیسەش هەرماوە ئەو دیکۆمنتانە هەیە.
Hekmat wants to show us the house where he grew up. Today, another family lives here because the memories are too much to bear for Hekmat. In this house, he lost 9 family members, including his brothers, sisters, and parents. He leads us to the cellar. Fleeing the bombings, 100 people sought shelter there that day. But by taking refuge here, they condemned themselves to a death by asphyxiation because sarin and mustard gas are heavier than air, and so they sink directly to the ground. 26 years afterwards, the town is gently healing its scars. But the survivors' scars are permanent. Kamal is 39 years old, but he looks 20 years older. The mustard gas attacked his eyes and his lungs, and they continue to do so.
كبيانوتوم دكتورة كانم هلا الهربس شوار ساعات 16 ساعات بكاري بينهم هر ساعات كرسي شارك بكاري بينهم شارك يجلس راحت كم جاري الروجانة كخول ببارية كشو هوا باش نبي من اللي ريتر أخن كيه مقر كهرباء نبي بداخل ولا ملاته وكشي كهرباش معناه يعني أمرم هتوزر روحك أنت ينالي بومته.
Little by little, Kamal's lungs are becoming blocked. Today, only 20% of his lung capacity remains, and there is no cure. In the middle of our interview, there is a power cut in his neighborhood, as there is nearly every day. No electricity means no oxygen machine. This is what the lives of some of Halabja's survivors depend on today. Half an hour later, light and oxygen have returned to Kamal. Today, Halabja's inhabitants want to understand how Saddam Hussein was able to commit such a crime. We have arranged to meet with Luqman Mohammed at the cemetery. Today, this survivor is fighting to get justice for one of the worst massacres of the late 20th century.
وبحقيقة أو خلقانش كتاوان بارن روبرو ياسا بكرينوا بقدر قصاي تاوانا كان دي بيشنيوان قلاب كفت.
Amongst those who are being labelled as responsible are French companies. As you will see, France is indirectly implicated in this massacre. To understand how, we need to turn the clocks back a few years. At the beginning of the 1970s, Saddam Hussein was the leader of Iraq, which was highly in demand as trading partner to the West. Jacques Chirac, the French Prime Minister at the time, went to Baghdad on an official visit in 1974.
Nous avons, au cours de ces entretiens, examiné toute une série de très grands problèmes, de très gros contrats, et nous avons effectivement procédé à leur signature.
Amongst these contracts were Mirage fighter planes and Exocet missiles. And after these transactions, the path was clear for companies who could secretly sell goods to Saddam to bolster his most highly prized military project, a chemical weapons arsenal.
L'Irak a pu considérablement accélérer son programme chimique militaire en allant faire ses courses effectivement en Occident et notamment en Europe. Et cette acquisition de technologies occidentales lui a permis d'aller beaucoup plus vite qu'il ne l'aurait fait avec un programme purement national. Le fait d'avoir effectivement bénéficié d'aides technologiques volontaires ou involontaires de la part d'un certain nombre de fournisseurs européens a clairement accéléré la capacité de l'Irak à acquérir l'arme chimique.
The suppliers to the chemical weapons program have all been identified thanks to a very thorough investigation. In 1991, UN inspectors arrived in Iraq. Over 5 years, they had two missions. Firstly, to destroy the chemical weapons stock. And secondly, to visit the factories and make a list of all the suppliers, including those who had sold chemical products and those who had sold vats or reactors to mix them in order to make weapons. This list of all the suppliers to the Iraqi chemical weapons program has never been published. But we've been able to get hold of a copy. You can find the names of hundreds of businesses that have supplied Iraq, and amongst them are several French companies, such as the Dietrich, which appears in the UN's list 189 times. This domestic appliance and heating multinational employs 1,300 people throughout the world.
Une offre innovante et dans l'air du temps, c'est la promesse du confort durable de Dietrich.
But de Dietrich did not sell wood stoves to Iraq. Between 1984 and 1988, the French company supplied vats, tanks and reactors, items that withstand the most corrosive acids and which are essential to mix large quantities of chemical products. This equipment is normally used to manufacture pharmaceuticals or pesticides, but in this case, they were appropriated by Saddam to make chemical weapons. Back in France, and armed with this confidential document that exposes them as a supplier to Iraq, we want to question de Dietrich, the company that was named most often in the report.
Mesdames, Messieurs, nous arrivons dans quelques minutes en gare de Strasbourg.
The company, based in Alsace, did not respond to any of our requests, either by mail or by telephone. So, we invited ourselves to their head office at the Reichshofen Chateau. According to our information, Daniel Steck, the group's CEO, should be there today. In the building's courtyard, the company proudly displays their products. These are reactors similar to those found in Iraq. It is in the chateau's park that our game of hide-and-seek with CEO Daniel Steck begins.
Bonjour monsieur, je cherchais monsieur Steck. Est-ce que vous savez où il est par hasard?
Ah, monsieur Steck n'est pas là, il est en déplacement aujourd'hui.
Il est en déplacement aujourd'hui?
Ouais.
Merci beaucoup.
Je vous en prie.
Merci à vous. Bonne journée à vous.
We go to Dietrich's nearby factory. Here, 400 employees manufacture state-of-the-art industrial equipment. It is in a factory like this one that the vats and reactors that were used in Iraq would have been produced. At reception, they are obviously expecting us.
Bonjour monsieur. Vous êtes des journalistes?
Oui, journaliste.
Non. Personne ne peut vous recevoir cet après-midi, ni demain, ni après-demain. C'est des consignes peut-être. Maintenant, prenez-le comme vous voulez.
Et monsieur Steck, il est en rendez-vous ici cet après-midi, c'est ça?
Je ne sais pas.
D'accord. Bon, on parlait de livraison de Dietrich en Irak, dans les années 80.
Oh, mais...
Ah oui, mais Dietrich a livré en Irak dans les années 80.
Mais oui, je sais. J'avais entendu des bruits, mais bon, ça s'est pas trop ébruité. Mais sans plus.
Bon,
excusez-moi.
Merci monsieur, c'est bien compris. Merci.
Then, for the upteenth time, we try to get in touch with the company's head of communication. And for the upteenth time, we are only able to talk to her answering machine.
Votre correspondant n'est pas joignable pour le moment. Veuillez laisser votre message après le bip sonore.
Selon mes documents, le nom de Dietrich apparaît plus de 180 fois dans la liste des fournisseurs du programme chimique irakien. Est-ce que Dietrich savait que ce matériel est exporté en Irak à des fins d'utilisation dans le programme chimique militaire? C'est une question assez simple, mais pour l'instant, je ne m'avais pas donné de réponse. À très vite, j'espère, c'est monsieur urgent.
De Dietrich will never call us back. But in October 2013, the CEO, Daniel Steck, stated in the newspaper The Nouvel Observateur, "We have never exported to Iraq. But I don't know what the intermediaries might have done. We are interested in one of the intermediaries who negotiate the sale of Dietrich products to Iraq. He lives in the suburbs of Mulhouse. In this confidential document from the UN, there is a name just next to Dietrich, Protec. We confirm that it is indeed this company. Protec is a modest company whose head office is based in this residential building. Strangely, Protec's main line of business is not the chemical industry. In fact, they are an estate agency with a focus on retirement homes. Why would Dietrich have sold its vats to Iraq through an intermediary who is actually an estate agent? We would like to put this question to Protec's boss at the time, Roger Kiss. Today, he lives in the same building that the company he set up is based in. We film discreetly.
Bonjour monsieur Kiss.
Oui, monsieur, oui.
Je m'appelle Jean-Baptiste Renaud, je suis journaliste, je travaille pour Canal+, et je voulais savoir si on peut vous poser des questions
écoutez.
sur votre rôle d'intermédiaire sur le programme irakien.
Le moment venu, nous donnerons tout ce qu'il faut à la justice. Et maintenant, on s'arrête. On s'arrête, s'il vous plaît.
Mais comment est-ce que vous êtes devenu intermédiaire? Comment est-ce que vous êtes devenu intermédiaire pour le programme chimique irakien?
Monsieur,
vous qui êtes promoteur immobilier.
Je ne vous répète plus, partez. J'ai assez de tout ça.
Est-ce que vous regrettez d'avoir été intermédiaire?
Roger Kiss said little more during an interview with Nouvel Observateur in October 2013. He put the ball firmly back into Dietrich's court. These companies knew perfectly well that their products were being sent to Iraq. After years of silence, France's justice system has finally decided to look into the matter. In Iraq, the man leading the fight against implicated Western companies is this man, Gabriel Mayron. He is a former tax lawyer based in Chicago. In his past, there was little to suggest that he would be the one to stand up for the victims of the Halabja chemical massacre.
Around the end of the 90s, 2000, I decided it's time for a change. And I'd also made some very good investments in real estate. I felt that I had no purpose left in life. And I began to think about human rights.
For 6 years now, he and his partner have been focusing on companies who allowed Iraq to build its chemical weapons arsenal.
I think that it's incredible that all the other people have complete impunity, that they can sit on their money, and they made millions and tens of millions and more off of the death and destruction of so many people. It's just unconscionable to think that we live in a world where there's no accountability for what you do.
Gabriel Myron got hold of the famous UN report that was written by the inspectors.
It's really a very important document. As a starting point, it's really essential for the case, because until then, the suppliers of the chemical weapons did not do this openly.
But the lawyer came up against a problem. At the time, the sale of this equipment to Iraq wasn't under an embargo, and therefore it wasn't illegal. So he wants to prove that the companies must have been aware that there was a risk that Iraq would use their equipment to make chemical weapons.
Starting in late '83, at least, it was known that Iraq was using chemical weapons on the battlefield. And so during these dates, from '83 till '88, anyone doing business with Iraq with anything that looked like it could be used for chemical weapons would normally have had to think about, am I contributing to chemical weapons?
There is one detail that he is particularly interested in: the delivery dates. For de Dietrich, according to the lawyer, these dates are incriminating. For example, the company made a delivery in 1987, 1 year before the massacre, but they also delivered in 1988, the year of the tragedy.
Kept on exporting in '88.
Right, even though in France there was quite a bit of publicity about the attack on Halabja.
So, according to you, they kept on exporting after Halabja?
Not according to me, according to the UN document that Iraq produced. Yeah, I mean, I'm just reading what Iraq and the UN have said.
According to Gabriel, the volumes delivered proved that Iraq was not only manufacturing products for industrial use.
Had, for instance, this amount of equipment be used to make pesticide, where the amount of super toxic elements into the pesticide is like 1/10,000th of what's in nerve gas, then you would have had to think, I guess, that Iraq was planning to make enough pesticide for the entire world for 50 years.
Armed with these details, last June, Gabriel Myron went to file a case in the Parisian courts against Company X as an accessory to murder. A complaint deemed as admissible by the department responsible for crimes against humanity. The lawyer has come to Halabja to give them the good news. Suiba Said Kadir is amongst his 2,000 clients. On the day of the attack, mustard gas left her blind.
I just, we're here. I wanted, first of all, to bless you and see that you're well. And I can say that the procedures are going forward very well. It still takes a long time, but we're making good success and progress.
Thanks to this lawyer's work, French nationals could soon be held jointly responsible for a chemical weapons massacre 26 years after the event. However, does France continue to deliver dangerous products to authoritarian regimes today? Bahrain, a small kingdom of the Gulf sandwiched between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Since February 2011, the kingdom has had its share of the Arab Spring. As was the case in Tunisia, Egypt and Syria, peaceful demonstrations have been violently repressed by the government.
Tensions et affrontements à Bahreïn où la police a ouvert le feu cet après-midi sur des manifestants dans la capitale.
Police in Bahrain used tear gas in astronomical quantities against protesters. At the height of the repression, 2,000 grenades were used each day. In 2011, after the demonstrations, human rights activists found dozens of these red grenades. Upon taking a closer look, the activists found that they bore inscriptions in French. One of these activists, Reda Al-Fardan, has been able to trace these grenades all the way back to their manufacturer.
One of the things that we found is basically the French, this SAE al-Assad, which is a French arms company, and on their website, they basically had brochures of their products. It was very clear. There's no other kind of manufacturer that manufactures all these. All of them are on the SAE al-Assad, brochures on their website. So they're caught red-handed.
Whilst the crackdown was in full swing, the Minister of Defence banned any further exports to Bahrain, in particular al-Assad. But the damage had already been done. The Bahraini police had substantial stockpiles of tear gas, and they were prepared to use them as chemical weapons. On this amateur footage, we can see the police throwing gas grenades into houses, an act that is banned in relation to chemical weapons usage. Inside the houses, a thick fog of tear gas fills every room. The elderly and the young are suffocated first. Little Sajida, just 5 days old, was asthmatic. She didn't survive the tear gas attack on her house. And she wasn't alone. In the space of 1 year, 39 people perished from the use of these grenades. Up until spring 2012, the time during which the police were using their stocks, inhabitants found red French grenades, like these ones, on the floors of their houses. We have come to Milipol, the large arms fair where al-Assad has a stand. We want to ask the French industrial company if it feels at fault for the use of its products in Bahrain. Discreetly, we managed to film the red grenades, a product that is highly coveted by foreign buyers. Our camera is spotted, so we can't go any closer.
Je vous demandais de ne pas filmer à l'intérieur du stand, s'il vous plaît.
Pourquoi filmer juste les produits? Ah, mais depuis
on a pas envie que vous filmiez les produits. Voilà. Non plus, s'il vous plaît.
On a le droit de filmer partout où on veut, dans la limite des allées. C'est vrai, c'est pas la peine de se mettre devant, vraiment.
Et moi, j'ai le droit de me mettre où je veux, aussi.
The head of communication will not communicate with us anymore.
Non?
La direction ne souhaite pas.
La direction ne souhaite pas? Je ne souhaitais pas être filmé. Parce que j'ai des questions assez précises, notamment sur le Bahreïn. Je voulais savoir si vous aviez vendu ces grenades qui sont juste là-bas au Bahreïn.
Nous ne pouvons communiquer sur aucun document.
Ce sont vos grenades qui se trouvent au Bahreïn?
Je ne sais pas.
Bah si, c'est les vôtres, elles sont juste là.
Vous allez voir les administrations.
Comment elles sont arrivées là-bas?
Vous allez voir l'État français.
Comment est-ce qu'elles sont arrivées au Bahreïn, ces grenades lacrymogènes, les gaz CS?
C'est bon, vous continuez votre question, moi je vous continue ma réponse. Allez voir l'État français.
Depuis 2011, 39 personnes sont mortes, notamment
vous allez voir l'État français.
Dues à l'exposition à des gaz lacrymogènes. D'accord, vous répondrez que ça.
Tout à fait.
In March, one of our sources sent us some photos. They show al-Assad grenades found in Bahrain in February 2014. That is 3 years after the ban on exporting them. We have a question for the Ministry of Defence.
Bonjour, Jean-Baptiste Renaud pour Canal+. Selon mes informations, on a trouvé au Bahreïn, au mois de février dernier, des grenades lacrymogènes françaises de marque al-Assad.
Et il y a même des photos qui ont été prises pour prouver que ces grenades étaient de retour au Bahreïn. Est-ce que la France a recommencé à livrer ce matériel au Bahreïn?
Alors, je peux répondre tout à fait officiellement que l'interdiction mise depuis février 2011 n'a pas changé. Il y a eu des autorisations d'exportation pour du matériel de détection et de décontamination, mais en aucun cas de matériel offensif.
Et donc, comment on explique qu'on retrouve ces grenades lacrymogènes au Bahreïn en février 2014?
Je n'ai pas d'explication.
Est-ce que vous pouvez regarder, vous renseigner, me tenir au courant?
On va regarder, oui, certainement, bien sûr.
Merci.
Autre question?
We will never receive the promised explanation from the Ministry of Defence, even though they are human lives at stake because of the delivery of dangerous equipment to brutal regimes. For over half a century, it has been the same old story when it comes to chemical weapons. The West sells their technology to the dictators. Then they are outraged when they make use of it. It is blatant hypocrisy, and it has deadly consequences.